Hey everybody, I'm Nadia Jordana, and you're watching Where Women Talk. My guest today is author Katie Roiger. She has a brand new debut book just about to be on the market, and it's titled Only the Brave. Let's go talk to Katie and learn more about this exciting new book. Welcome, Katie.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
It's great to have you on the show. And one of the things at first that I was wondering about is I'd like to have you tell us the story about middle school when you started writing out of necessity.
I'd be happy to. So, I've been a big reader ever since I was very young. I liked to say when I was that age that I'd read Sleeping Beauty and Black Beauty at the age of 7. I didn't understand any of it, but I like to say that because it sounded cool. But I read everything I could get my hands on. I had my favorites that I'd read over and over. And after a while, I ran out of the ones that I really loved the most. And that made me want to know if I could do it myself. And so that's how I got started. I would just honestly copy my favorite writers and see if I could make up a story that sounded anything like theirs. And they say that, imitation is a form of flattery. So I hope no one gets worried about whether or not I'm going to, do any copyright infringements. I promise that's not the basis of any of my stories today.
I wish I read like you did in middle school, and I wish I would have started writing at that time. That sounds like a fun way to get started.
It was fun. I have to say, I've saved a lot of my old stories, and they don't stand up for the test of time at all. But they're fun to look back on and see how far you've come.
Absolutely. Well, now you are an editor with Pointe Publishing. I'll bet that's a great environment. They're also your publisher, but I'll bet that's a great environment for inspiration. Is that true?
It really is. I do edit and do proofreads for Fox Point quite frequently, and it's interesting to be in that environment of ideas and see what other people are coming up with. You can't help but be interested and encouraged to write more.
Tell us about this. This is your debut book titled Only the Brave. Tell us about this book. I don't know if you have a cover for it yet because it's coming out in June, but tell us about the book.
My book, Only the Brave, is my debut novel, and it actually was inspired by a short story I wrote in high school. I was given a writing prompt during a creative writing class, and I don't remember what the prompt is now, but I remember coming up with a character named Victoria, and the storyline went that she had this accidentally broke valuable property of a neighbor who was the neighborhood crank and ended up having to work for him for the summer. And I loved it so much. And my mother is in the journalism field, and she had contacts in the publishing world. So I sent the story to an editor friend of hers for critiquing. And he was kind enough to write back with encouragement and praise. And I felt really good about myself. And then I shelved it away and forgot all about it. And then I became a librarian right out of college, and I would be checking out kids' junior fiction books, and I'd be recommending other series for kids to try. And I thought, I would really love to do this myself. I feel like I could write something that kids would like to read that would be interesting and fun and gripping. And I remembered this story I'd written as a high schooler, and I dug it out, and it wasn't too bad. And I just kind of started playing with it a little bit. But around this time, I met and married my husband, and he is a National Guard member. He was for 10 years. And I loved hearing his stories about serving, because to me, it was fascinating how you would give up, honestly, a lot of personal time and a lot of comforts, honestly, to go and to help your country in a very general sense in a lot of ways that people might not ever know about. And his twin brother is in the military, his uncle is in the military, both of his grandfathers were in. So it's something that his whole family really, really respected the service and was very wholeheartedly about this kind of service. So I kind of honestly, just a character popped up out of nowhere who ended up being really crucial to the story based on these stories I'd heard. And then it became personal for me because my husband is a state trooper and he went through the academy when we were engaged, and he's now in the service to this day. And while I'd never known him as a member of the military, I live with the reality of being or a trooper's wife every day. And it's a little similar, honestly. It's very, they give up a lot too. They give up holidays, they give up special occasions, they even give up a lot of sleep, a lot of personal time. And as a wife and a family member, you realize that in some ways it's very similar to being a military person's wife or spouse or loved one, because you worry about them. You wonder, they haven't called. Are they okay? Is anything going on? Around the time when I was actually really starting to get into writing this new story, I was 9 months pregnant, and my husband got called up to serve, to help do peacekeeping during the George Floyd protests. And he was supposed to be gone for a couple of days. He ended up being gone for, I want to say, over a week. And I went to see my doctor, who said, "Oh, you're about due. Make sure your husband's around this weekend." I'm like, "That's not going to work," So it was one of those situations where I felt a little bit like, I wonder if this is how military wives feel. So that's a lot of what I put into this story, is what it would be like from another person, like a different person's perspective, a family member. Because in a lot of ways, they serve too. That military families are people who could also thank for their service, because they're giving us their loved ones to help for the common good and for the public good. And they don't get to usually get acknowledged like that, but they're doing a lot behind the scenes. They're taking care of the family, they're making sure things are running, and they're hoping and praying and worrying themselves. And so that's something I really wanted to capture, and I hope I did it in a way that service members can be proud of and look at and say yes. And I hope it's a way that people will feel engaged with, even if they have had no experience with that lifestyle.
Wow, there a lot goes into this story and what you're doing. And speaking of family, how has your family and perhaps close friends, what's their reaction to you getting a book published and it becoming a real thing? This is very exciting to get a book published. How do they react? What did they say to you?
My family and friends have been wonderful. They've been thrilled for me ever since I was able to share the news that my book was going to be published. They've been very supportive. For instance, my husband's uncle, is currently in the military, and he was crucial to the fact checking and research part. My family and friends have pitched in to help just keep me going as I wrote and wrote and rewrote. And my community has been so encouraging of just the fact that this is all going on. I do work occasionally for my local library, and the community there has been really supportive and encouraging, and has asked me, it's just been very good about asking me, when are you going to be here? When are you going to talk? How can we get a hold of a copy? And that's always nice for a first-time writer who doesn't have a platform or a lot of followers yet, and who are excited for her in that way. So it's any success I have is due to the wonderful people I have behind me.
Oh, that's really good. And there's a couple of things you said did remind me. Summer is, of course, coming up. And there are a lot of potential personal appearances. What kind of things will you be doing over the summer? And will you be at the one in October, the one in Mankato, the Deep Valley Book Festival?
Yes, I will. I will be personally at the Deep Valley Book Festival in October. And as for personal appearances, the ball has just started to roll in that direction. I'm already booked for quite a few libraries, which is exciting. And I'm booked for some makers festivals in Mankato in the early autumn. I'm really thrilled to be able to go to libraries, especially since they kind of feel like my home field. And it's just going to be really fun to get to talk to people about this book, young and old, whoever wants to hear, I'll be there.
Absolutely. And as far as being a writer and young writers coming up who might be interested in writing in your genre, what kind of advice would you give?
I like this question because it's something I can look back on my own experience and say, what would have been helpful to hear personally at that age? And what I would say, I'd say two things, I think. The first one is read everything you can, because that's how you learn how sentence structure should be. I think you could pick up any book on how to write, like good grammar, good syntax, showing, not telling, that sort of thing. But when those are helpful. But I think the best way to learn is really by picking up a book that interests you and seeing if you can identify what it is that the author does. How good are they at moving the plot along? How good are they at making characters you really love and really worry about when something happens to them? That kind of thing is just really crucial if you do want to write. And of course, it doesn't hurt to try to mimic your favorites. You won't end up sounding exactly like, but that's not what you want. You want to sound like you, and mimicking is a good way to learn what you are and what you aren't. And then the other thing I would say is give yourself some grace and realize that the first time around is not going to be your best time around. When you get an idea and you sit down to write, you want it to pour forth just as you see it in your head, and it's not going to be that way. And you might look at the page or the screen in front of you and say, oh, I'm terrible and I will never write again. No, let that sit and then come back to it in a week, and you'll realize that it might still not be as great as you thought, but it's going to be a lot better than you thought at the time you finished. And that's honestly something I've done. Even as I wrote Only the Brave, I would write and then I would let it sit, and I'll come back to it and I go, okay, this is what I really liked about what I wrote. This is the thing that needs to be fixed. And that is really important too, I think, is just being able to say, this is a good starting place, and I'll come back to it and I'll make it even better.
That makes perfect sense. And then one last question. Do you have any storylines or plots on the back burner, in the works for next year, perhaps, or the year after?
I do. Thank you for asking. So, Only the Brave, if all works out, is potentially going to be the start of a trilogy. I have 2 other books planned. I'm working on the second currently. And then I always like to do a little bit of historical fiction and fantasy playing with. I've never actually presented any of that to Fox Point, but I hope to one day, maybe when I'm finished with Victoria's story.
Oh, great. So we'll be hearing more from you as time goes by.
I hope so.
All right. Well, Katie, thank you so much for being on the show today. You are a delight, and I can't wait until your book comes out.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone, for watching Where Women Talk.